A perfect room for my mother.
Right. Now I need a phone number to fix a home with a mother-in-law problem.
Hey.
I'm in a pickle. Did you say baby?
Do we have any ice cream?
Protect your family from radon. Make your home safer. Call 1-800-SOS-RADON. 1-800-SOS-RADON.
Welcome to the new John Simmons Show. After years of battling a gambling addiction, John found a hope and a future for his life through Christ. He has spent the last several years encouraging others to find joy, peace, and hope in their lives by walking out God's plan for their lives. Now, John wants to help you find the passion, vision, and faith you need to start writing out God's sentence for your life and help you add to it every day. Phone lines are now open. Call or text 314-880-0808. Now, here is your host, the new John Simmons.
I'm working for my girl. He's intentional. Hey, and he's never failing.
Welcome. It's the new John Simmons Show, part of the Testimony House Network, where you can find God's sentence for your life and become the new you, where we talk about finding passion, vision, and faith in your walk with Christ so that your life can overflow with joy, peace, and hope today. Welcome to the show, everybody. Happy Thursday. We're looking forward to a fun-filled conversation this evening. First, a couple news and notes. I want to let everybody know that, of course, as always, or almost always, I should say, because we weren't doing the live stream yesterday. We had Pat Williams on, and we had pre-recorded that interview. So the live stream is not available yesterday, but today it is. It is available on your Facebook account. Just search for the new John Simmons Show. You can stream live or catch past episodes of the live stream over on YouTube. Tonight's conversation is going to be one on mentorship. I know everybody's favorite subject, mentorship and how you find it and do we need it, sort of a number of conversations. But in the last segment tonight, I want to go over some of my favorite mentorship movies, movies that have encouraged me in some way or another to think about the people in our lives. And I really I want to share that list with you. So if you have a mentorship movie that you think is relevant to the conversation, or maybe it's just touched your life in some way, just comment below your favorite mentorship movie, comedy, drama, doesn't matter to me. Share those ideas with us. We'll share them on the air later in the program. You can also text in to the station. Let us know what you're thinking about your favorite mentorship movie, 314-880-0808. And, of course, just comment live on the live stream now, and you can be able to get in on this conversation later on in the show. So stay tuned. Now we're going to be talking about finding a mentor today. A conversation I don't think that I ever had before I found Jesus. Not something that is on my radar, maybe not on yours. But this idea that there should be people in our lives that sow into us. That's a very Christian term, John. What does that mean? People who teach us things, people who show us things we don't know, people who are a little further ahead on the path than we are, that can help show us, guide us, teach us, give us some stories of some experience, be that wise sage in our lives to help us when we most need it, or when we don't even realize we need it, and they say something that just goes, oh my gosh, that is the most great thing I've ever heard. I'm going to start doing that in my life. Mentorship was something that is very difficult to come about. I feel like, let's be honest real quick here on the top of the show. I read a lot of leadership books. I read books and I read articles about team building and entrepreneurship and all of these things that are guided in the direction of trying to make more and build a legacy and build ideas and build business. I love these types of stories. In the tips and tricks guide of most of these books, they'll tell you, surround yourself with good people. We talk about this on the show. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, but a mentor is not necessarily someone you're spending a lot of time with. A mentor can be someone you see very rarely. A mentor can be someone that just, is able to answer some questions at a time when you need it. Maybe it's somebody you work with. Maybe a mentor is someone who you've worked with in the past, but you still have that relationship built to where you can go back and, garner their approval of a situation you're facing and that you're trying to get through, or maybe, ask for their opinion. What is a mentor? Is a mentor someone you have to know? I was going through articles on this. I came across an article written by Kathy Caprino over on Forbes.com. She discusses how to find a great mentor. So how to find someone who is going to teach you and grow you. I love this idea that she leads off her article with, and I'm going to discuss it here for a moment here at the top of the show. She says, don't ever ask a stranger. Don't ever ask a stranger to be your mentor. Well, if you want a mentor, don't you want to grab the top of the heap, the best of the barrel? And oftentimes, do we have relationships with the person we want to be? If we're an actor and we want our mentor to be Tom Cruise or Robert Downey Jr. or Anne Hathaway or one of these folks who have made a name for themselves in the theater, do we just call them up, or what? How does that work, right? Not often. So we don't want to ask a stranger. According to her article, we're going to discuss if we agree with this or not. I think in some ways we do, but we'll get into it more. Basically saying that if we have to ask a stranger, the answer they're going to give us is no. We haven't built a rapport with them, a rapport. We haven't built a relationship with them that allows them to want to give to us. When you get to a place where you're able to give back, your time becomes a lot more valuable. You're pressed in all sorts of different directions, especially in the concept of being a mentor. If you are a person who is highly sought after to be a mentor, you're going to have lots of people reaching out to you, and it's difficult for that person to even find the time to give to. Even if they were able to, the timing is going to be difficult. If someone has to ask the question, the article says, if someone has to ask a stranger to be their mentor, the answer is probably no. When someone finds the right mentor, it's obvious. The question becomes a statement. Chasing or forcing that connection rarely works. In other words, just going up to somebody who you appreciate and even you value and you want to have their opinion in your life, and you seeking it out isn't always the easiest thing to do. She just goes on to say that great mentors, come through people who are already inspiring us, but are able to be in our world right now. So we're looking for teachers or pastors or Sunday school teachers, or you're looking for coworkers, or you're looking for someone in your circle who's a little ahead of you to find a mentor right now. You need a mentor right now. This is sort of the goal, according to this Forbes article. What I want to start with, though, we started with this already, actually. What I want to get into is the conversation of the importance of a mentor. The importance of a mentor. It's, like I said, all these books that I read told me that I need to find one. And when I started reading all these leadership books after I got born again and I'm chasing God's sentence for my life, I'm trying to find the plans that God has for me, and it becomes very difficult because all of these books, they all say, hey, John, go get a mentor. Go get a mentor. And I'm like, well, okay, where do I sign up for? So there's not a mentor store. There's not a Craigslist for mentors. I don't know where these places are. I read all these books where everybody has these great mentors, and they talk about all these wonderful, beautiful relationships they had built over time. But I was struggling. I was struggling to find a mentor in my own life. I had started this ministry, Testimony House. I was really wanting to seek guidance in regards to how to take some steps that we were thinking about taking, how to plan our ministry model, how to think about certain directions we might go and what we should avoid, and try and learn from someone in experience. And so I took the method I was taught by my pastor at the time. The first person I ever heard teach me about vision also taught me about the importance of finding a mentor. And I really appreciated this lesson. He told it from the point of view of his own life, at least in this section. He told us a story about how he met John Maxwell. John Maxwell, if you aren't familiar, is a very popular name in the leadership space. He is an author of, I don't know how many, dozens, hundreds, a lot of books he's written on the ideas of leadership, teamwork, all sorts of any sort of like self-help. They're not really self-help books, but they're geared towards, growing you in your gifts and your talents and your ability to lead others and influence people. He's also a believer, John Maxwell, and all of his books come from the Christian perspective, which I appreciate. So John Maxwell's an author. He's sold, millions and millions and millions of books. A well-known name if you're not familiar, at least in the Christian book circle. So my pastor at the time was telling a story about how he had read John's books years ago, and he was very interested in learning more from him. And so he said that he sent him a handwritten letter stating his desire to learn from him and build up his church and a number of things that he was wanting to learn from John. And eventually John responded back with an affirmative. He said in his letter, though, something I found interesting and that, sort of left field from some of these books that I have read on how to find a mentor and the purpose of a mentor. I think his purpose was right in writing the letter. He wanted to learn from John about becoming a better leader in these things. Where he sort of zigged away from what the books that I read teach is that he said he would give John $100 to have lunch with him. Now, this was years ago. I don't know how much $100 was worth a couple decades ago as far as lunch, but it sounds like a fancy lunch. And so John met with him for lunch, and he said that they didn't meet for very long. It wasn't a 4-hour conversation. They had lunch, and he asked a few questions, and that was it. Ever since then, though, that first step of the relationship, they've now built over time, and we teach here on the show that you build a better relationship with other people and also with God through two methods: quality time and communication. You don't become a better friend to your neighbor or to your coworker or to your spouse without quality time and communication. You also don't become a better Christian without quality time and communication with God. You have to spend time in your word, at the church, prayer. These are just a few of the ways you can spend time with God. Not all of the ways, but you get the idea. Quality time and communication. Just like you sit at the dinner table with your spouse, or you call someone on the phone when you're in traffic. You go spend time with your friends on the weekends. If you never saw your friend, your best friend for 10 years, you might still consider him your best friend because of your former relationship, but is he really the closest person to you at this point? John and my pastor built a relationship that over time developed into a professional relationship where John is now on the board of directors at the church, and they share a mentor-mentee relationship, maybe more now, a relationship that is based in camaraderie, and they are more equally paired at this point. I was interested in this theory that if you write someone a letter and, offer them something, maybe you'd get a response, because I was looking for a mentor at the time and I was having a very hard time. Like I said, reading books, watching videos about being a leader. Find a mentor, find someone to teach you the ropes and show you the tricks and the tips. And at that point, I was looking for a mentor in regards to building my ministry, building out the infrastructure of what we would do as a group of people who wanted to help people find God's sentence for their life and find their gifts and talents from God and get born again and build the greatest story ever told in their lives. We had a lot of ideas, but weren't necessarily certain on how to walk those out. So I started to make relationships with pastors and area leaders. None of them were able to fill this role of mentor-mentee in my life. I found it very difficult. I'm telling you this because if you're dealing with the same thing, or if you didn't realize you needed a mentor and you're going to go out and look for one, and you're going to find this is not as easy as John promised on the radio. No, I'm not telling you it's easy. I'm just telling us we need to start thinking about it and start looking after one in our lives. I don't just take my word for it. The Bible has plenty to say about the idea of mentorship. One of my favorite verses on the subject is 2 Timothy 2:2, which says, "And what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." This idea that, what we preach and what we share, what we've learned, whether it's our experience or our relationship with God. We need to share this with other people, this idea of talking in front of many witnesses. If you know something, whether you're the best in your field or whether you just know something more than, the trainee that just got hired next to you, you should be able to entrust what you've learned to them. Teach them also. Just because we're looking for a mentor doesn't mean we need to find the very best. Sometimes the best person in the room is just the person who knows a little bit more than we do on a subject. We might even pass them up. But guess what? Then we're going to be in a room with another person who knows maybe a little bit more than we do. I started to adapt this philosophy of writing the letters and trying to get someone in my life who could help me go further in ministry than I currently was. I'm a baby Christian-ish, trying to find God's plan for my life, realizing he's put a very direct and specific call on my life that I had been praying months and months and months from God for. You don't need a mentor if you don't have a vision, by the way. A common phrase that we hear, or maybe I've heard and you've heard, is that a teacher arises when a need arises. Or a teacher appears when a need arises. So if you want to learn something, the teacher will show up and help you. This is sort of commonplace. It's a metaphor for life. If you want to learn how to do something, someone can come in your life, or a video can come in your life, or a book can come into your life where you now want to learn from that person. But if you aren't trying to learn something, if you aren't trying to go somewhere and you don't need any direction, you won't need a mentor. So if you don't have a vision for your future that comes from either God or your own plans, because you can make a vision or have a vision or a path for your life that doesn't include God. You can be a Christian too, by the way. A Christian can walk out whatever plans they want in their future and still go to heaven. Yes, that's right. You do not have to do a lick of what God wants from you, and you can still get into heaven. You're going to have to deal with some conviction and, have to answer for some of that stuff, but God's ultimately designed us to have free will, but he's also designed us to live out a purpose-filled, vision-filled life that comes from him. He created us in the womb. He designed us. We are his handiwork. If you are a hammer and when we make a hammer, we want that tool to do what it's supposed to do. If we start using a hammer to draw on the sidewalk, it's not doing what it's meant to do. It might be having a great time over there on the sidewalk, but it's not going to fulfill its purpose. Many Christians are out there drawing on the sidewalk when they're supposed to be hammering nails down. It's okay. It's okay. We're trying to use this show to encourage you to get back where you're supposed to be, or to realize you have a specific vision from God. But if you don't have one, and you're hearing us talk about finding a mentor today, what's the point? You need to first find a vision from God. It's what I'm going to tell you to do. A vision from God comes in 5 ways. Through his word. So it's not that the vision isn't out there, it's hard to find. It's, do we have the desire to find the vision? And if we have a vision, we do need to find a mentor. We're going to need to get around people who can help us, slug out this path and really, they've already taken some of the beating for us. And we can just sort of follow along in the path behind them. When we come back, I want to discuss more about what it takes to find a mentor, this Forbes list, about what are some ways to find a mentor. And then coming up at the end of the show, we're going to talk about my favorite mentor movies. Again, if you have a comment on what a mentor movie is to you that you liked, just comment on the Facebook live stream. But when we come back, we'll discuss this even further. Don't go away. You're listening to the New John Simmons Show, part of the Testimony House Network. Faithfully Fit and Wellness is St. Louis's all-new faith-based fitness program. Not only does Faithfully Fit want to see you shed pounds,
the talk of St. Louis, broadcasting on 920 AM and 106.9 FM.
Want to start writing or add to God's sentence for your life? Want to learn what that means? Visit newjohnsimmons.com for articles and videos that can help you find a future and a hope for your life today. Now, back to the New John Simmons Show.
Welcome back. It's the New John Simmons Show, part of the Testimony House Network. If you didn't know, on Fridays we're doing gifts instructions. We're doing a 8-week sort of course, if you would. Something we like to do in our ministry is help people discover their God-given gifts, help them find exactly what God's given them, because we talk about it a lot on the show, and we want to be able to help equip you find them and then also use them in a way that's beneficial to walking out God's sentence in your life. So our goal here ultimately is to be able to use this airwaves and use this show to promote classes and opportunities for people outside of their car to learn these things with hands-on instruction. But for now, we're going to be doing these courses here on the air. We're going to be doing them every Friday evening, bringing my buddy from the ministry, Kevin, in for the next 8 or so weeks as we go through the motivational gifts. So tomorrow night, if you're interested in learning what your gift from God is, when he talks about in Romans 12 that we all have one, we're going to go through them, and you're going to be able to listen and hear the characteristics that go with each gift. You're going to be able to understand the worldview and the point of view from that gift, and you're going to start to think, oh my gosh, I do that. Oh my gosh, I like that type of job. I want to do that sort of thing in my life. And then, so hopefully it'll bring some revelation knowledge, some light bulbs start going off in your mind, and then all of a sudden you're set and you're going and you're walking out God's sentence for your life. And when you do, you might need to find a mentor. That's the conversation on tonight's show. Finding a mentor, finding someone who can help encourage you, draw you further down the road you're trying to walk. I recently came across this Forbes article talking about how to find a great mentor. We've gone over the first step. She has 4 steps here. Kathy Caprino wrote this article a couple years ago. How to find a great mentor. First, don't ask a stranger. A stranger is not going to have a relationship built with you where they're able to have that desire. And even if they do have the desire, it's unlikely that they have the time. People who, are in a position that other people want to be mentored by them usually already have a number of people surrounding them. Think, if I want to be a better basketball player, can I go to LeBron and be like, hey, you teach me how to be a better basketball player? No, I have to find a coach or someone in my local neighborhood who's a better basketball player than me, learn from them, move up the next level. It's the same thing. I want to be a better mechanic. I can't necessarily get on the pit crew at NASCAR yet. I need to go and work my way up. Maybe I work at Jiffy Lube first and learn from, Gary at Jiffy Lube, and then I learn from, Ted's Automotive. You go up the ladder here, right? A mentor does not necessarily have to be the best person in the field. It just needs to be the person you can get access to. Number 2 in this list from Forbes on what you can do to find a mentor. How do you get on the radar of people you admire? Don't ask for mentorship initially. Instead, she says, follow people's work, be helpful and supportive, give and give more. If you find someone on the internet or social media that you want to maybe find and see if they'll be a mentor, instead of going out there and be like, hey, will you mentor me? Maybe it's your opportunity to get involved with what they're doing. I see this a lot in Christian ministries. I did this myself, this exact same thing. I found things that I enjoyed about ministries or people who had spoken and touched my heart in some way, specifically with Joe's ministry, Joe McGee, who we've had on the show recently. I started to follow what they were doing, started to get involved if there was opportunities. Here in St. Louis, if you're trying to build a ministry, maybe you should go attach yourself to another ministry and help them out. Find a cause or find a group that's doing something you can get excited about and do that with them. It's not about finding a mentor initially. It's about you being a part of something and sort of observing what's going on. Eventually, I came into a position and an opportunity supernaturally through the blessings of God where I was able to stand next to a guy named Matt who's doing the radio show over for Joe's ministry. Now, me and him are great friends, and we're doing doing radio together and talking about it every day. I have a mentor in that aspect of relationships. You can't always assume where these things are going to show up, but you can sort of be intentional with some of the things that you're doing to find what you need to fulfill God's sentence. It's not hard, guys. It is hard, but it's not hard. It's not, there's not this difficult, calculus problem that you have to solve to find God's path for your life. All you have to do is find Christ, get close to Christ so that you can hear from him. And then listen, because when God talks to us, when God talks to you, when God talks to me, he's talking to us about what we should do next. This is all over the Bible. When you read the Bible, you'll see this sort of phrase all over the place. Thus saith the Lord, and God said, and God spoke, and God told, and I listened and I heard from God. All of these things are directed at something to do. God doesn't show up and say, thus saith the Lord, how are you? No, he's like, I need you to go to this town. I need you to pray for these people. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. How are you doing today? When God talks to us, guys, he does want a relationship with us. He does hear our, it's possible to have a relationship with God where you're communicating like that. But when God talks, he's talking to us about what we should be doing. What should you be doing? You should be seeking out God's plan for your life, and you do that by praying and asking for it a majority of the time. And when you find it, how do you fulfill it? Well, you've got to learn, because when God shows up with a plan in your life, you're not going to know what it is. When God told me I was going to start a ministry, I literally had no idea what a ministry was. The only time I'd ever even heard the word was parking lot ministry at my church. I had no idea what a parachurch ministry is, which is what this is, by the way. In case you didn't know, Testimony House is a parachurch ministry. Isn't that a great term? We use it all the time because everybody knows what it is. No, of course we don't. When God calls you to do something, you may have never even heard of the term. Noah didn't know what a boat was. Peter, James, and John didn't know what an apostle was. So when God shows up with that vision, he's going to send people in your life to mentor you. We need to realize the need for mentor. All the leadership books, all the secular world tells us that a mentor is necessary in our lives. I found it very difficult to find mentors in my life, even though I wrote the letters, I offered the $100 lunches, and I didn't get a whole lot of response on those. I did get some, but no one sat down with lunch for me. No one sat down at lunch with me if I offered them $100. Maybe somebody will write me a letter. John, I'd love to give you $100 to go to lunch with me. One can dream, right? Number 3 on my list, make myself laugh, even if no one else is. Number 3 on our list of how to find a great mentor goes along with being joyful and laughter. Be someone who is enjoyable to mentor. No one wants to be around a grumpy Gus. No one wants to be around a person without vision. No one wants to be around a person without enthusiasm when it comes to teaching them something. The best students are the ones who are engaged. I mean, we see this at school, right? The kids who sit up in the front of the class and they listen and then they do what they're told. These are the best students. They get the best grades. They're the teacher's pet. When we're growing up, we make fun of these kids. But if you can use this same behavior in your adult life, guess what's going to happen? Great things are going to happen in your life. If you can do what you're told and be engaged and listen and then accomplish the things that you've been asked of, you're going to get good grades, which means you're going to get a good job, a good paying job. You're going to move up the promotional ladder. You're going to find yourself being a great husband or a wife. You're going to find yourself being a great parent. You're going to find yourself doing things that you never thought possible in your life because you're trying. You're trying to learn. You're trying to do. And that's what a mentor wants out of people. If I was like, hey, man, so I was thinking, you should show me some stuff on the radio. And then somebody was like, yeah, I'd love to teach you about the radio, John. And then I showed up 15 minutes late for our first meeting, or I came dressed in like my pajamas, or when he was talking, I was looking down at my phone. That's not going to be a person that I'm going to get mentored by much longer. We have to think about our behavior. Be a person who is enjoyable to be around. Sometimes you can't help how you act, your behavior, as far as what you give off. You can't always come into work with this big smile on your face or even think to do it. But what you can do on this list is be intentional about some of your actions. I enjoy this list. I think it's biblical, some of these things, even if they're not written from a biblical perspective. Be great at what you do. This is, in terms of getting a mentor, finding someone who sees what you're doing and then wants to help you even further because they see that you're trying, you're being a good student. Let's just equate this to work so you can sort of understand the idea that we're trying to teach here tonight. Be great at what you do. If you work anywhere, if you have a job and you show up and you are engaged in your job and you realize the rules and you're not trying to like skeet out 20 minutes early under the radar and get paid for it, and you're not showing up with your shirt untucked, and you're not showing up and wishing you were off work already, if you really like what you're doing and you're trying to be good at it, meaning when it's time to do the job that you like to do. When I worked at Chick-fil-A, I hated doing the lemons. I can still be good at doing the lemons even if I don't like the job. So if my manager sees me having a good time cutting the lemons, which is the worst job, even if I hate cutting the lemons, I'm still acting like I like cutting the lemons. He might be more engaged to have a conversation with me, teach me how to do the next thing, and then all of a sudden I'm cutting the chicken. I'm marinating the chicken and instead of cutting the lemons. Just a thought. Ask for more responsibility. I like this one because a lot of people don't like responsibility. Most people don't want to be called on in class. Most people don't want to be a leader. They just want to sit in the back. No one wants to. You see this in church all the time. This was when I realized what was happening, this was a light bulb moment in my life. You go to church. What happens at church all the time, especially like in the small groups or Bible studies? Oh, does anybody have any prayer requests? Jimmy, what's your prayer request tonight? Oh, Susan, your daughter's sick again. Yes, we're gonna pray. We're gonna pray for Jimmy's job and Susie's daughter. Would anyone like to pray? And then it's crickets. Everybody just has got their head down. Everybody's like, oh, I'm not praying. Don't call on me. And no one wants to get called. Now, listen, guys. If you're a believer and you're not praying, that's bad news. If you are a believer and you're afraid to pray in front of others, that's awful sad. Because what's the worst you're going to do? They're going to realize, oh, he doesn't. Oh, that was a bad prayer. No one's going to be like, oh, that's the worst prayer I've ever heard, Jimmy. But no one wants to do it. It's the same, you don't want to answer the question in class. You don't want to mess up. You don't want to be looked at without, and feel stupid if you do say the wrong thing. I saw this in church all the time. Not just one church. This was every church, every Bible study I went to. You could just tell. If someone, I could feel people clench up. And eventually I started looking for it. When people would start saying, hey, who wants to pray? I start looking around the room. Oh, that guy don't. That guy for sure don't. You can see it. It's just like any other thing in life, when it's time to, pick up after the party. Who wants to clean up do the dishes? Who wants to pick up the chairs? And everybody scatters, right? No one wants to do that. A mentor will notice when we do things like this. We set ourselves up in a position where we can have someone to guide us in life if we're just willing to do our jobs right. Do what's been called upon us. If we can learn how to pray, that prayer at that Bible study might be the thing that opens up the door for communication with somebody who was there who didn't even know about you and comes up to you after the Bible study and is like, hey, man, I heard that prayer was really good, or, I heard you praying about this in your life, but I want to let you know that I've got this thing, and I can help you with that. And all of a sudden, you now have a relationship with someone because you're willing to step up when it's time to step up. Same thing at a job. Accept responsibility. This is the key here. This is the on the list here of how to find a mentor. Accept responsibility. It's also the definition of maturity when you accept responsibility. If you're unwilling to do what needs to be done when it's supposed to be done, you're going to be unwilling to follow God's sentence for your life when it's time to be done. When Abraham took Isaac up to the top of the mountain and he was about to plunge a knife into his son before God stopped him, if he lacked the, gumption to accept responsibility to do that, he would have never done it. If Christ had not accepted the responsibility to die for our sins, it's a sign of a mature believer. It's a sign of maturity. If you're able to pay your bills on time, it's a sign of maturity because you've accepted the responsibility of the bills on the table. Just a thought. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about finding a mentor. I'll share my top 5 movies of the mentor relationship, and we'll wrap up tonight's show. Don't go away. You're listening to the new John Simmons Show, part of the Testimony House Network. Faithfully Fit and Wellness is St. Louis's all-new faith-based fitness program. Not only does Faithfully Fit want to see you shed pounds, but also wants to see you shed any other weight you've been carrying through Christ. Classes are filling up every morning during the week, so grab your spot in an individual class or an 8-week boot camp. Faithfully Fit offers classes in circuit training, drumstick fusion, cardio, and strength and personal training. Classes start at just $5.
You can now enjoy lunch with Stoley every weekday at noon for the Brian Stoll Show.
The whole place was screaming to me to bring a pay-per-view back here, and we will absolutely bring a pay-per-view back here. This place was awesome, and I loved it.
What kind of timetable are we looking at for that?
Well, we haven't left yet, so
we got to keep you here.
We'll be back next weekend.
Don't miss the Brian Stoll Show, weekdays at noon on WGNU 920 AM.
Every topic is on the table here at WGNU 920 AM and 106.9 FM.
Find passion, find vision, find faith. You're listening to the new John Simmons Show, part of the Testimony House Network.
Stay connected with the show. Head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Look for @NewJohnSimmons. And if you would like to visit the live stream or watch our videos, all you got to do is head to Facebook and YouTube and search for the New John Simmons Show. @New John Simmons for me, New John Simmons Show for the videos. Lots of ways to stay connected with us over on the internet. Talking about mentors this evening, talking about how to find a mentor, the purpose of a mentor. Proverbs 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another." In order for this metal, iron, to get sharp, it uses the same metal to strike against it. You know, how do you sharpen something with the same thing it's made out of? You just do. It's just part of life. And so, also, the Bible says we sharpen each other. So get around people who are sharp or trying to get sharp, and they're going to help us get sharper in our own lives. God's plan for our life is to not be alone. God's word is filled with scriptures and stories and teachings about not doing things alone. The Bible describes if you pray, one angel is sent to flight. If two of you pray, 10 are sent to flight. If 3 or more of you pray, there's thousands of angels that get sent to flight. It's a multiple rule. It's when he created us to get married, there's because 2 are better than 1. And even God, the picture of God and who God is himself, he's 3 beings, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and God. So it's not good to be alone, the Bible says. It's not good to be alone. And if you are following God's sentence for your life, if you're trying to find it, or if you're just stuck in a path where you don't see any light at the end of the tunnel, it could be time to get around a person. You might call them a mentor. You might call them a teacher. You might just call them a coworker. You might call them a friend. Someone who's a little further or a lot further down the path you're trying to go. If you're a Christian, you want to get around Christians who have got a little more maturity in their Christian walk. You want to be a better mechanic? Get around a guy who knows how to tinker a little bit better than you do. You want to be a better baker? Get around someone who's baked a good cake. You know, it's not hard. It can be hard to find that person, but it's not a hard thing to understand, is it? Movies, by the way, talk about a mentor-mentee relationship all the time. I was just going through a list. I saw a top 25 list. I'm going to give you my top 5 here in a minute. But 25 movies about someone who was taught by another person. Men in Black, $1 Million Baby, Pinocchio, The X-Men, Kung Fu Panda, Rocky. Just going down the list here. What about Gordon Bombay and the Mighty Ducks? Oh, I love that movie. God can use anybody. What a picture of God can use anybody Gordon Bombay is. Coach Carter, Mary Poppins, Obi-Wan and Luke and Star Wars. So many people on this list. Let's go over my top 5. Top 5 movies I've seen that I really enjoy the relationship between the people that are conversing, between the people who are one person's learning, one person's teaching. These films encourage me in certain ways, and we'll discuss it here to close out the show. Number 5 on my list, Almost Famous. Almost Famous is a movie directed by Cameron Crowe. He was one of my favorite directors. He hasn't done something in a long time. I appreciated a lot of his films before I got born again. And Almost Famous is one of these films. It's this story of a high school writer. And he gets pegged to follow around this band who is opening up for a bigger band. And he goes on tour with them. And he builds relationships with the members of the band and also the groupies that are following the band along. And he writes an article about the band for Rolling Stone magazine. This is based on a true story. In the movie, the author's name is William Miller, the main character. I'm not sure if these names are also the true story names, but in the movie, William Miller is this high school kid who follows the band around, and he gets pegged by an editor named Lester Bangs, played by the deceased Philip Seymour Hoffman at the time. And Philip's character, Lester, notices the potential in William and gets him his first job. It lands him his next job. And throughout the movie, you see a few phone calls back and forth. He doesn't take up every scene of the movie. He's not in the cast of the crew that go to the events to play the music. He just shows up every once in a while, and it's always when William needs that, that sage advice. What should I do now? I'm struggling with this. And he just always seemed to come in and say the right thing at the right time. And I appreciate relationships like this because you get a true mentor in your life. It's someone who believes in you. Not just someone who's teaching you. I can get taught how to do a job by my manager. My manager may not believe that I'm the best person for that job or believe that I was made to do this. There are people in our life who encourage us even when other people don't. That's the type of mentor we need in our life. It's the type of mentor you should pursue because they're going to be truthful with you. They already appreciate what you do well. And when you can appreciate what someone does well, you can also be honest with them about what they don't do right. You don't need a bunch of people in your life telling you, oh, everything was perfect. You did a great job. And you also don't need someone in your life who's like, oh, everything you do is the worst. I heard this a lot when I was gambling. Oh, you're such an idiot, John. Why do you do that? We don't, there's two of those. We don't need that. We need someone in the middle who's being honest with us. Lester in the movie was being honest. Do this, do that, don't do that. And that's a mentor type of person that we need. Number 4, moving along. Good Will Hunting, one of my favorite movies growing up. And in my teenage years, I must have watched it dozens of times. I thought I could solve that math problem. I could be the smart kid who gets picked up out of the rubble of his life. Robin Williams plays Sean McGuire, who ends up being like the anger management therapist, basically, of Will Hunting's character, played by Matt Damon. A relationship that is sort of forged through fire. They don't want to be together, or one of them doesn't really, and they sort of fight back and forth until the pupil sort of realizes the wisdom and then follows his advice. This happens so much in our lives, right? We get around people who we don't really, we don't appreciate what they tell us, and then one day all of a sudden they're like, oh man, I wish I would have listened to Grandma. I wish I would have listened to Uncle Ted. He told me about this. And sometimes we get to a point where we're like, hey, Uncle Ted, I'm going to listen to you now. Hey, can you tell me what's going on? Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Yoda and Luke. Who doesn't love a good Yoda? He knows it all, and he's going to tell it all, and he's going to whack you on the head with his baton. Sometimes it's difficult to get it into our head, so you need that knock on your forehead to say, listen, buddy, you're not doing it right. Number 2 on my list of my favorite mentoring movies, Wax On, Wax Off, Daniel-san, Mr. Miyagi, Karate Kid. It isn't always someone who you expect it to be. It isn't someone that you really recognize as being the person who's really going to get you through that. But they're steady. They teach you what you need to know. They won't let you advance past what you need to know. Mr. Miyagi didn't take him down to the championship match the first day they met. He's making him wax the car. He's making him catch flies with chopsticks, right? The lessons are progressive. This is a good mentor relationship that we need. Number 1 on my list of favorite mentoring movies. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. A favorite movie of mine, Finding Forrester. This is a movie with Sean Connery. I forget the guy who plays the Jamal in the movie. He hasn't been in a whole lot of stuff. I think he was in 24 or something. I forget. He was in something recently. Forgive me for not knowing what it was. He plays Jamal Wallace. And Jamal is a inner city youth who has a gifted writing ability, and he comes across agoraphobe in William Forrester, who's written one book, but it's this like super popular book, and everybody knows what it is. And somehow they get in a relationship where William's now teaching Jamal how to write and develop his talent, and eventually his talent leads him to getting accepted in a private school, and now he's able to pen his own famous book, and all of these things take place in the course of the film. But what we learn here is that, a good mentor teaches us pulls the best out of us is that, the gifts that we already have from God, they're already in there. God already gave them to you. What a mentor does is he helps you refine, helps you mature, helps you, really establish the gifts and use them properly. Someone who teaches you how to really take and grab hold of what's already been put inside of you by God and use it to a great, significant purpose. This is the type of mentor we need to look for in our lives. Someone who can really pinpoint, if you just tweak this, if you were more enthusiastic about this, if you spent more time practicing this part and left that part alone because you're pretty good at that already, someone who was able to really help us. Finding a mentor is important. It isn't always easy. I would start at, if you want to find a mentor, it starts with prayer. The best mentor we have is Jesus. His word mentors us in so many ways, but in our physical world, in our right now world, to find someone, look around you. Start asking God to show you, who can you learn from? Who's someone who can teach me? Find them and don't let go. Ask questions. Find a good question to ask. Think about it. Say, what can you ask your coworker, or what can you learn that you don't know? Wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to learn something I didn't know the day before. I'm going to learn to do this thing at work better. I'm going to learn to, appreciate this part of my job better. My ministry, my church, you can, flip-flop the words however you want. A mentor is important. The Bible has a lot to say about seeking one out. I want to encourage you today to pray and ask God to show you who the mentor is tomorrow in your life. And down the road, you can grow your list and, become more influential yourself and get an opportunity where you're able to mentor others. We're not talking about just getting inside a big brother, big sister program. We're talking about you using the gifts that God has given you and cultivating them to not only serve God and serve others, but then teach other people because you have experienced what that is like. God's sentence for our life, it goes around and around. We walk it, and then we teach others to walk it. That's what 2 Timothy 2:2 said when we talked about it earlier in the show. We have to go, guys. I've appreciated tonight's conversation. And don't forget to head over to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Look for @NewJohnSimmons. Follow the live stream on Facebook and also on YouTube. You can pick up a copy of my book, Finding Faith, and read our blogs over on newjohnsimmons.com. I want to thank Curtis behind the boards tonight. And I want to thank all of you for listening in live on Facebook and also on your radio. Until tomorrow, guys, I pray you discover a future and a hope for your life today.
Thanks for listening to the new John Simmons Show, part of the Testimony House Network. To replay this episode or listen to past episodes, look for the new John Simmons Show podcast on your mobile device. Stay connected to the show. Read the latest news, blog posts, and see behind-the-scenes photos by following @New John Simmons on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you would like to learn more about how you can begin to write God's sentence for your life, or join a growing community of people who are finding passion, vision, and faith for their lives, please visit newjohnsimmons.com. Until next time, we pray you discover a future and a hope for your life today.